hold of us, 990 WBOB out there in Rhode Island, of all places. And we're kind of getting things back to where they need to be on this show. I got all sorts of things happening. All sorts of things happening. I don't know what that means, technically. CHRIS CONNELLY is supposed to join us here in just a few moments. We were trying to put something together with him when we were in Chicago, of all places, for the old porn convention. And we were not able to make that happen. However, we're supposed to have him on with us today. So we'll see if this actually takes place. But we are going to go to some CHRIS CONNELLY music. If I can't seem to... Supposedly the call has started. So
hello?
There we are. I believe we have CHRIS CONNELLY. How are you, sir?
Hi.
Thanks for being with us today. CHRIS CONNELLY is joining us today here via the magic of the old skip Skype, and he has got a brand new album, and he is with us today here on our big broadcast. So, Chris, talk to us a little bit about this brand new album, my man.
It's called The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick, Volume 1, and there is a Volume 2, which is going to come next. Obviously, it's still being mixed. It's a record about my hometown of Edinburgh, and it kind of, it's about sort of homesickness that people feel when they don't live in their native country, and you always feel like kind of a guest in someone else's country.
Yes.
And so the record was kind of, I suppose, an impressionistic view of my life as a teenager there, growing up and being in bands and things like that, and what I did before I moved to the US, which was, in 1987 is when I started moving over here. So that's what the record's about. I did it in my own studio. It's a very minimal record. It's me and guitar and a few other things thrown in there, but I kept everything fairly low level and focused on keeping the voice as loud as I could, because I wanted people to hear the words, because it's all about the words and the melodies for me these days.
That's
or
awesome.
At least this month.
Or at least this month. That is awesome. That is awesome. We have got a great guest with us today. He joins us live here on our big broadcast, coast to coast, border to border on iHeartRadio today. Also AMFM247.com. Find us on Spotify and, of course, 990 WBOB out there in Rhode Island, of all places. And CHRIS CONNELLY with us today. He is back with a brand new album, The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick, Volume 1. And he has been making music for 4 decades. Talk to us a little bit about that whole thing. That is pretty amazing.
Well, I started doing music really in bands about the late 70s. I suppose 1980 was when I really started to get serious about it. I was still, a teenager, but that's when I formed my first band. We're called Rigor Mortis, and that band became the
awesome.
Fini Tribe eventually. And it started off with me and a couple of my friends, and we were listening to. I listened to a lot of things like Throbbing Gristle, but I also listened to a lot of things like the Stooges, and it could not be avoided, but the music scene at that point where I was from was just amazing. I mean, you could not walk down the street without bumping into a really great local band. The local bands in Scotland were just brilliant. And the records you heard on the radio were really good too. I listened to the John Peel Show, which is a very famous British institution. And, it was on John Peel, which was between 10 and midnight, Monday through Thursday, I believe. And you'd hear things like, the birthday party, and going back even further, you'd hear things like bands like Blurt, Captain Beefheart, a lot of very, very obscure reggae. I think every third or fourth record he played would be a reggae record. This is where I heard about, heard the music which we now call post-punk. Bands like Wire and things like that were all a huge influence on me back then. But, it was a time when, I was very lucky to be that age, because after the sort of pomposity of the 70s, all of a sudden it was accepted that you would kind of be in a band by yourself and you didn't need anything. I remember doing my own cassette albums, right? And so you'd buy a 10-pack of C90s from Asda, was the store, which is, like Walgreens.
Oh, yeah.
And I would record the album live to a cassette, but I didn't have anything to dub the cassettes with, so I just play the album by myself 10 times, and then I'd have like my...
Wow!
Yeah.
That is fucking amazing.
Well, it was horrible.
Holy shit, dude!
Terrible, but it's how it's how I got interested in that part of the process.
Yes,
which I'm still interested in. I had a cassette recorder, and also had a reel-to-reel recorder that was my father's, and I started doing experiments with that, like recording with the heads off, so it was recording at super high speed, and you'd play it back and it'd sound like
that is
necessity
amazing.
is the mother of invention. I didn't have anything, so you just made it up as you went along. Record the vacuum cleaner and try and borrow your big brother's guitar when he wasn't watching.
That is amazing. So what did that process teach you?
It taught me that, first of all, you don't need an awful lot, and it taught me about time, and it taught me about how easy it was to sort of remain true to what you wanted to do, because I was doing this in my bedroom. Nobody was telling me what to do. The idea of approaching record companies at that point was just... that was someone else's thing.
It's somebody else's
that
thing.
happened later, of course, but it taught me a lot of how to be, like, where I'm sitting right now is my own studio, and I don't have an awful lot of things, but I can make quite a lot of noise if I want to,
That's tremendous.
That's what I learned back then, and I built on that, and me and my bandmates built on that. In fact, the band Rigor Mortis, who became the Fini Tribe, eventually, after I'd left, they built their own studio, and it's a working studio now, and it's a really, really popular studio in Edinburgh, Fini Flex. And we started at ground zero with a broken reel-to-reel tape recorder.
That is amazing. We have got Chris Connelly with us today. He has got a brand new album, The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick, Volume 1. And we have been talking a little bit about his experiences of making 4 decades of music. And he just has consistently pushed the creative envelope over the years. He's had involvement in Ministry, the Revolting Cocks, PIGFACE, Sons of the Silent Age. He's had solo work. He's written books. My God, there's a hell of a lot there. I don't know if we're even going to have enough time to cover it all. Let's talk about the books that you've written. Talk to me a little bit about the 4 books that you've put together, my man.
Well, the first book I wrote was basically a book of lyrics, Confessions of the Highest Bidder. That was in the 90s. But then I did the book Concrete, Bulletproof, Invisible, and Fried. And that was my life in the Revolting Cocks. And it wasn't necessarily a biography of my musical life. It kind of started in the late 80s and finished in 1993 when that chapter of my life ended. But I wanted to, in a sense, humanize and humorize what was, it was a very sort of could be construed as a very misanthropic and dark scene. And certainly when I jumped into it, and I mean, I did jump into it. I moved over to Chicago from Edinburgh. I didn't know anything. I knew nothing about anything. So I came over, and so I wanted to get these feelings down, like, what's it like to be me in 1987, just arriving at O'Hare, and, you know, Al Jurgensen was there to meet me at the at O'Hare Airport, and the first thing he did was he broke a Walkman because he wanted to play me a song now. He didn't want to wait till we're in the car. He didn't want to wait. He had to play it to me now at the luggage carousel. And he got really frustrated with his Walkman, and he smashed it on a pillar. And I thought,
wow, that's a hell of a first impression, baby.
And so writing a book about that years later, it was kind of, I had to sort of do a big chart and put it on a wall, like October 1989, December, the tours, where were we? And that was kind of enough. It wasn't pre-internet by any means, but there was less knowledge online than there is now. So a lot of it was me just trying to remember what happened and corroborate the dates online with tours and interviews or what have you. And there were some great stories to tell, and it was my point of view as well. Before I wrote the book, I thought, well, should I just get in touch with everybody I knew at that point and just interview them and put together a really comprehensive story? And I was like, well, that's not what I want to do. Someone else is going to do that. Someone who's not as invested in the project as I am. Someone who can watch from the other side of the mirror, if you like. Yeah. So I just made it my point of view, and this is what came out. So that was my first, I suppose, prose book. And then after that, I did a book called Ed Royal. And Ed Royal was a novel, it was a thriller set in Edinburgh. And I started writing it because at that time, I just, my first child had been born, and I wasn't really doing music. I was far too busy being a new father. But I did have this, I did want to keep being creative. I couldn't really do it in the apartment. So I would write on the train. I had like an hour to and from work train journey every day. So I just started scribbling in a notebook and put this story together. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but then I kind of liked the discipline of writing a book. You have to really think in a different way than if you're writing songs. Like if you're writing a story about a guy walking up a flight of stairs, you got to kind of walk up the stairs and make sure you get it right. You don't miss a step or something, you know.
That's awesome.
So that's how I wrote the book, and I came up with a twist in the tail ending, and it worked really well. And then after that, many years later, sort of during lockdown, I compiled a more comprehensive book of lyrics, which came out in 2019 or 2020 during lockdown. So that's my literary history right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you were writing that thriller, what inspired you to write that?
What inspired me to write it was the amount of thrillers I've read myself and the amount of noir, pulp fiction novels I've read. It's sort of like, if you keep reading these books, and I love them, I devour them. You keep reading them, you start to see things that writers do, like tricks that writers do, and how books are formed. There's kind of I suppose there's a method to it of introducing characters, giving away parts of characters, developing characters, much in the same ways when you watch a film or something, I suppose. So that really inspired me. I just loved the books of Ruth Rendell, the books of Patricia Highsmith. Patricia Highsmith was a huge influence on the book because you got this sort of, a lot of the times you've got this central character who is a criminal, but they're kind of they're they kind of mess up a lot, and they make terrible decisions. So the crime they committed,
terrible decisions.
By chapter 4 is just way bigger than just murdering someone. It's just because they've messed up so much. And Ed Royal's a bit like that. This central character is just a complete loser. It does everything wrong. And I just really enjoyed the sort of not getting into character, but you can write whatever you want. Early on, I was like, oh, should I do this? It's like, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's your book.
It's your book, baby.
Nobody's expecting anything of you. You can do what you like.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. We have got a great guest with us today. Chris Connelly joins us here in our big broadcast. He's got a brand new album, The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick Volume 1. He has been talking with us here a little bit about his literary situation as well, with 4 books. So why write the different books that you've written? What inspired you to write each one?
It's a good question. It definitely wasn't money. I've got this thing where maybe it's a character flaw. It's the same as when I make records.
Maybe it's a character flaw. That's awesome.
When I write songs or when I write prose, I have to have there has to be an end game. There has to be closure. So I start writing, and I don't want it to just exist as my writing. I'm not happy to be an artist who just writes and puts it away.
Yeah.
It has to have, there has to be a final statement. It has to come out, and it has to be available for people to read if they want it. And it's the same with records. Like, I'll write 10 songs, and then it has to be a record. I'm not going to just put these 10 songs away. So I am, I put out a lot of records, and I do write a lot, and I could stop for a decade and just stockpile songs, but I think I would get really bored really quickly. Once you've got a record out, I find that you've recorded it, it's going to come out, then you can start thinking about where you want to go next with your creative path. At least that's what I find.
That's awesome. We have got a great guest with us today. He joins us live here on our big broadcast. Chris Connelly is with us. He is amazing, and he joins us here talking a little bit about The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick Volume 1. So besides your books, you have had a lot of releases, 20 plus releases, which is just freaking amazing, because I know that there are people who haven't even left their couch yet this morning, and you put out 20 fucking records. So it's pretty amazing. Talk to me a little bit about doing all of this.
Well, first of all, I have to do it. I just have to do it. I'm not in competition with anyone, but I am prolific, and I do write a lot, and that's why there's so many records. The way I do it is I do it in the early hours of the morning. That's when I feel it. And so I get up really early, and so by the time I wake my kids up for school, I've already, put something down on tape and recorded or mixed a song. I find that time a really good time to create. That's when I do my writing as well. I don't do my writing at night. It's just, it doesn't work for me. Many different people have different ways of doing it, but the witching hour is between 4 and 6 in the morning for me. And it's almost like nobody knows I do this. Where do these records come from? They just sort of creep out of my studio, and like my family they know I do it, but they never hear me do it.
That's awesome.
So that's my creative process, and the same goes for the writing as well. I'll just sit and work at it. I'll get up in the morning and just go straight down, and I know when it's going to happen, because I feel a weird sort of twitch in my right hand, and I know where to put my fingers. I write on guitar, and I just start going with it.
That's tremendous. We have got a great guest with us today. Chris Connelly joins us here on our big program. So you have managed to do some amazing things with this latest piece of business, The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick Volume 1. What are you hoping people gain out of listening to this record?
I think it's I look at it as a series of sketches. In fact, the physical copies of the album come with a hand-drawn sketch that I did. And the sketches are charcoal on paper. They're very stark looking. And what I want people to get out of it is an idea of where my creative spirit comes from, which is, Scotland, and maybe get a sense of where I'm from. I tried to do it in a way that made it attractive. I really thought hard about the melodies before I worked hard on the melodies before I committed to them.
Yeah,
I want people to feel that sort of beauty. And it's something that is not necessarily cerebral. It's definitely something that happens inside of you. So when I go back to Scotland, I can feel it. Nobody has to tell me. I don't even have to open my eyes. I just feel it. I wanted to try and transcribe that beauty that I feel and put it into a record. But also, there's a lot of feeling in that record of when I was a lot younger. We're talking about between the ages of 18 and 21, basically, is and all the fun stuff that goes along with that that I miss dearly.
That's awesome.
But that's what I want people to get out of it, vicariously through me.
Well, we are going to play one of the tracks from this, and I am probably going to butcher this name, so I apologize.
Try it.
Fini Chagall?
You're right, Fini Chagall.
Jiggy Jaguar, the ugly American. A broken clock is right at least twice a day. Chris Connelly with us today. He's got a brand new album, The Lives and Loves of the Serial Homesick Volume 1. So tell us a bit about this video. We are going to play the video for the we're going to try to play it for the TV viewers. For the audio folks, of course, they'll hear the song. But tell us a little bit about this music video, my friend.
So my manager, Kimberly, who lives in Scotland, made the video, and we got this footage from an old friend of mine, Angus Cameron, and he used to come to all the Fini Tribe concerts and things like that, and he made this sort of 15-minute promotional film back then in 1984, where he interviewed us as a group and interviewed us individually and filmed us rehearsing. And so Kimberly chopped up bits of that and put it into the video for the song, and I just love it so much. And there's footage of Edinburgh now in it as well. So it's perfect, because that song is about the Fini Tribe, obviously. I mean, very much. And it goes through certain things that we did as a band and how we worked as a band, which was a very special thing to me. So that's the video for you.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to do this. I'm going to place you on a brief hold here on the old Skip Skype. We're going to play this track. When we come back, we will have more with Chris Connelly here on your Sunday radio broadcast, coast to coast. And
Fini Chagall, another autumn of this, as we write our way around the girls we know. When the music swells like testimony bells, we'll lie down on the high street on North Berwick Law. Fini Chagall, all the paintings we were, as we spun around spires for a thrill. We read about risk and the passions of camera, and a European voice was distilled. The sculptures felt like rain, carved stone will always change. But I'm in love with the intention. Fini Chagall. Fini Chagall, we were dressed to undress in the blizzard of our flat. The strength of our art form, no matter how well disguised, no one walked away from that. And the mountains of sulfate and the red Lebanese buzz spirit in this engine of song. Ah, but we broke our own hearts, 'cause we worked in the dark, and I had to leave home before long. The sculptures felt like rain, carved stone will always change, but I'm in love with the intention. Fini Chagall. The sculptures felt like rain, carved stone will always change, but I'm in love with the intention. Fini Chagall.
Fini Chagall, that is Chris Connelly, and he joins us live here on our big broadcast. We go back to the fabulous Chris Connelly joins us back live here on our big program. So that was an incredible music video.
Isn't it great?
It is a tremendous song.
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the feedback you've gotten on this so far.
Well, first of all, the feedback from my friends in the Fini Tribe was really great as well. They really liked that. But yeah, people seem to be reacting really well to the album. You know, you never know. You try to be as sincere as you can, but people really like the video. I like that it brings that past back into the future. You know, I really like that there's that footage of me when I was young and good looking. And it's like, oh yeah, I used to have something.
That's
I used to have it.
That's awesome.
It's a nice reminder.
So you've done a little bit of everything. You've done books, you've done records, you've done all sorts of stuff. What is there that you haven't done?
I've creatively, I mean, you know, I've never acted. I've never gone parasailing or done bungee jumping. But yeah, acting is something I've never done. Although the band Sons of the Silent Age, which is, we perform the music of David Bowie, it involves a certain amount of that, because you've got to really try and understand the writing of David Jones, playing the character of David Bowie on stage, and you have to step in and try and be that. So there's a lot to think about there. It's made me interested in it. because it is a process that you kind of have to figure out for yourself. But yeah, I've never been, you know, in a play or anything like that.
That's
I'd be
awesome.
a great Macbeth. If anyone's looking for a Macbeth, I'm your man.
That is tremendous. We have got Chris Connelly with us today. He joins us live here on our big program. So, what are you hoping that fellow musicians that are picking up this album? What are you hoping they get out of it?
Well, you know, I paid so much attention to, because the central instrument on this album is guitar, and I think in writing it, my own playing improved quite a bit, and I had to work hard at it. Also, nothing I played on this record is in standard guitar tuning. They're all in really strange tunings. All the tunings are guitar tunings that I learned from Joni Mitchell songs and Nick Drake songs.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I've always been a huge fan of alternative tunings. But I'm a really terrible note keeper, so I've forgotten.
I'm a terrible note keeper.
Yeah, I'm a terrible. I'm the worst. I have terrible ADHD, and so my songs are just, you know, scraps of paper, you know, just anywhere on the back of grocery lists. And wow, this is a great song. How did you play it, Chris? I have no idea how I played it.
I have no idea.
I'm trying to get better.
How this thing came about.
I'm not one of these people who chronicles, and you know, I'm really bad at it. I'd make a terrible surgeon.
I'd make a terrible surgeon.
That's hopefully not going to happen. But as far as other musicians getting something out of it, perhaps the fact that it's so minimal, but you can say a lot with being minimal, it's something that I admire in other artists. If I hear someone like, you know, Leonard Cohen or something like that, the absolute profundity of what he says against a very minimal background, and he doesn't really raise his voice above a conversational tone. That speaks a lot to me.
He's pretty fucking impressive, I'll have to say.
Yeah.
So with all this various things that you're doing with the new record, obviously we talked a little bit about this before, but it's titled Volume 1.
Yeah.
So how many volumes is this thing gonna be?
Two. I mean, it's there's volume 1 and 2, and they're both quite different. But I could have done, you know, just a really long record, double album or something like that. But my last album was a 2 CD set. It was like really, you know, well over 2 hours long. So I wanted to do it in bite-sized chunks this time. Volume 2 has a lot of similarities, but it's fleshed out a lot more. Volume 2 has, you know, a band on it, and a lot of other instruments. And that was deliberate. Volume 1 I wanted to keep as sparse as I possibly could. Volume 2 is a lot more expansive, and also musically, Volume 2, I started to experiment with things like the idea that I moved right from Edinburgh to America. I started to try and include that idea in the writing. So there's some things on it that are even quite sort of country and western tinged, shall we say. The idea that I came here, and you remember our ministry, one of the first things I did when I came over from America was I bought a straw sort of Stetson. When I came from Britain to here, the differences between the UK and the US, and Al Jurgensen, he was always pretending to be a complete redneck, though he wasn't one, but that culture I was exposed to, and it was kind of unbelievable to me. So Volume 2 is very much more playful. There's a lot of fooling around with genres on it, which I enjoyed very much.
we have got Chris Connelly with us today. He joins us live here on our big broadcast. So there is a lot going on in your world. Talk to me a little bit more about your creative process. I love this. Getting up early in the morning. I'm starting to hear more and more people do that.
Really?
And I have always been somebody who attempts to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning because I want to have all this crap taken care of before the world wakes up.
Yeah.
But what is your process like with that?
Well, it's habit now. I mean, you know, I started getting up really early when I had kids, because I knew that once they were awake, when they were very young, they're older now. When they were very young, you know, my time was not my own.
Yes.
You know, so kids wake up early, so I would wake up earlier because I had to create. So, you know, I go through long periods of time where I'm not being creative, you know. I mean, long for me is not years. It's like weeks, maybe a couple of months.
Yes.
And I've never been someone who worries about that. Like if I go for months without writing anything, it's fine. I still get up early and I'll play. Maybe I'll rehearse for a gig that's coming up, or I'll do some exercise or something like that. But that time is my time, and it's my time to do with what I want. I do think that there's a certain way your brain reacts to being up that early. I think you write in a different way. I think because you're still sort of not necessarily half asleep, but your brain is operating in a different register at that point in the day.
Yeah.
Then I think that, you know, your writing will be different. Your words will take on a different color, and your melodies will be different too. So you go back to something at 5 o'clock at night to listen back what you did at 4 in the morning. First of all, you don't remember it. Second of all,
you don't remember it.
What did I do?
What the hell did I do there?
Like, oh, I wrote that? That is not something that this person would write now.
That is amazing. I wrote that? What? Chris Connelly with us today. He joins us live. He is a fantastic musician. He has put together a heck of a recent collection of music. Now, talk to me a little bit about what you're doing besides music, because, you know, in doing research for this interview, I found all sorts of things that you're allegedly doing nowadays. Supposedly you're a vocal instructor at Oak Park School of Rock. I don't know if that's true.
No, I was for many years, but I had to give it up because I was working far too much. I had to cut that out of my life.
Yeah. And then another thing that I seen is that supposedly you manage a record store.
No, I used to do that as well.
And I'm like, you're doing so much. You are literally busier than a fruit merchant. You are just out here all over the damn place.
Well, yeah, I worked at Reckless Records for years and years and years. You know, and I ended up managing one of the stores in Chicago, but I stopped that about 10 years ago. I do miss it. I actually miss being around all that music, but you know, it can be overkill as well.
Yes.
You can never tell me that there's not good music coming out now. You know, it's just not true. And you work in a record store and you keep hearing, yeah, there's a lot of crap out there, but
yes,
there's also an awful lot of creative people doing great things. And so it can be quite overwhelming, like, drowning in it, which is not the worst, worst thing in the world. But I also used to work at Dusty Groove, which is an online record store that specialized, when I worked there, it really specialized in soul and jazz. And so that was a big eye opener for me. I've always been a jazz fan, but when I started working there, I began to get really into jazz, and it really it's not informed my music in terms of particularly. I mean, some of the chords I use are jazzy, but more of the way that people approach that music to play it has, certainly been an influence on me.
That is awesome. So when you're writing music, like when you were composing the music for this record you've got out now, where the hell do you get your inspiration? What is your writing process like?
Well, the two records prior to this were the last album that I put out was called Eulogy to Krista, and that was a record I wrote about Nico from the Velvet Underground, and I wanted to do a record of her songs, but then it grew, and I recorded about 10 of her songs, but then I wrote 12 or 13 more about her life and made this double album, which follows a chronology from her being a teenager to when she died. And the record before that was called The Birthday Poems, and it was about tangentially about the Scottish poet George Mackay Brown and his girlfriend Stella Cartwright, and that was, it was for all intents and purposes a song cycle about two characters that actually existed. I really liked writing about real things, whereas before my songs were maybe a lot more esoteric. They're more about a feeling rather than a solid thing, but writing a historical story and having a trajectory was really exciting to me. So as I get older, I find my inspirations are more tangible. I like writing about people, about figures, and I'm going to do. I've actually recorded 2 albums worth of material about Lou Reed, which
that's awesome.
Is
a huge Lou Reed mark. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be out till probably next year, but I wrote from when Lou Reed was a teenager up until his final days, choosing my stories carefully, and choosing the songs carefully too. So yeah, and that was really fun to do as well. It meant I read every single bio that was out there about him, and put together my own composite story about him. Love him or hate him, he was a very important cultural figure.
Yes, very much so. We have got a great guest with us today. Chris Connelly joins us here on our big broadcast. So if people want to keep up with you online or social media or any of these things, how do they do that exactly?
I have an artist Facebook page, and I also, under Christopher Connelly, I have my own Facebook page. I always, my manager, Kimberly, runs Instagram and X. So yeah, I'm fairly visible when I want to be.
I'm fairly visible when I want to be. That is badass. Well, you are amazing.
You're very kind.
Thanks for making as much time as you did for us today.
Of course.
This has definitely been fun, and I look forward to chatting with you again. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your Sunday. I will talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. There he goes. The fantastic Chris Connelly with us today. And it's always a good time to chat with a legend. And I'm glad we got a chance to do that today here on our big